we do have a very large pig production, and we really have some very hyperprolific sows. So we have a very high efficiency in the sows, but we also see that we have some issues still. For instance, with the sow mortality is very high in Denmark, and it's not going down. We also had problems with piglet mortality. So I think we still have some issues related to how we manage feeding and nutrition of the sows in order to also help solve these problems.
Good day. My name is Ruurd Zijlstra. With me, I have Dr. Anja Strathe, who is an associate professor at the University of Copenhagen.
Thank you very much for having me.
So to just kickstart our conversation, why is the topic of swine feeding and nutrition important in Denmark?
Well, we do have a very large pig production, and we really have some very hyperprolific sows. So we have a very high efficiency in the sows, but we also see that we have some issues still. For instance, with the sow mortality is very high in Denmark, and it's not going down. We also had problems with piglet mortality. So I think we still have some issues related to how we manage feeding and nutrition of the sows in order to also help solve these problems.
Kemen calls all swine experts. You already know the key to a profitable swine operation is healthy, productive pigs. Our team of swine experts are driven by curiosity to create science-backed ingredients and solutions that help you maintain feed and water quality, improve intestinal health, optimize nutrition, and eliminate pathogens. Learn more today by diving in at kemen.com/swine.
Could you perhaps provide some insights into what is the level of piglets born or weaned per sow in Denmark right now? And when you talk about high mortality, what would be some numbers there?
Yeah, well, for the sows in average have above almost 19 piglets in average total born, but we also have some that have much higher levels. We do have some that are very good at managing. So we actually have farms that wean like 45 piglets per sow per year, which is quite high. But we also have farms with very high mortalities where the mortality is between 15 and 20%, which is very high. It has been changed now. It's going down again because they have changed also the breeding program to try to help the problem about piglet mortality. But we still have a very high mortality in the sow, which in average is around 16% of the sows, which is really high. And especially what is seen for the sows is that many of the sows that are culled due to leg problems or hoof problems. And then the other part of the sows that we see that are dying on the farms are usually dying just around farrowing. So we can see that there must be something that is really where we are pushing the sows too much, maybe around farrowing, which is also, I think, is quite interesting, related to find some solutions related to the nutrition and feeding of the sows.
Yeah, those are very impressive production numbers. So if we then focus on the piglets themselves, is it possible to change nutrition of the sow and thereby increase piglet birth weight in case that is a contributing factor to piglet mortality?
Yes, because we would very much like to have, larger piglet at birth, because then we would probably also decrease mortality, because we know that piglet birth weight is really correlated to the mortality of the piglet. So it would be nice if we'd not had all the piglets weighing below 700 or 800 grams, because they really take a lot of management to make them survive, even though it's possible. I have done quite a lot of trials on the gestating sows where the focus was to increase piglet birth weight. So we looked at, for instance, B vitamins. We have looked at different antioxidants like organic zinc and selenium and vitamin C. We have also looked into something that is anti-inflammatory, like omega-3 fatty acids in the diet. And also we all specifically looked into methionine. to see if that had any effect. And we had done several trials with the omega-3 fatty acids, both in early and during entire gestation. But I mean, we don't really see, for some of the studies, we do increase the individual birth weight a bit, like with 30, 40, 70 grams, which is also something. And for some of them, we also did see, for instance, for the omega-3 fatty acids, that we had fewer of the very small piglets in the litter. So it's possible to do a little bit, but I don't think we have found really the thing that really moves it a lot. What we also see, because we would also like to see a smaller variation within the litter, because it's nice to have more, have all the piglets in a more similar size. And here, I must say, I don't think we can do anything, because we have made like 5 or 6 trials in different farms, and every time we actually have a variation within the litter that is 300 grams plus minus 5 grams. It's the same number every time. So I don't think we can do anything about the variation, but we might be able to increase the average birth weight slightly if we find the right things to look at.
Okay, so then the strategies that you mentioned, like the vitamins and the omega-3 fatty acids, did you apply that throughout gestation or just through the final third or quarter? How did you do your research?
Yeah, for some of the studies, we actually only looked in early gestation, because we had an idea that the variation and the smaller piglets, and we can see that it's probably already established quite early in gestation. So we did this study where we only looked at fetal development to see what was actually going on in these hyperprolific sows. And we could see that already at day 28 of gestation, we actually had these very small fetuses only weighing 1 gram, but some of them were already smaller, and they also had a smaller placenta. So we had an idea, if we could do something early, then we might help it off, but we didn't see great effects on placental development and piglet birth weight. For instance, the omega-3 fatty acids, we have done studies both looking at only early gestation, but also feeding through the entire cycle, and also not really seeing any effect. We did see effects on some of the immune parameters of the sows, for instance, cytokines. So we might have improved something there, but not enough to pay off on the birth weight. So I think it's quite difficult, but yeah.
So that means in early gestation there is already some very important events happening.
Yes.
That may determine a chance of success with changing birth weight throughout the rest of gestation.
Yeah, and we actually looked into also doing a feeding trial where we looked at even earlier, because this variation might have been established already before mating, when we have egg maturation already in the farrowing unit. So we also did a study where we looked into feeding with glycogenic diets. So we had high levels of glucose in the diets 1 week before mating. And very surprisingly, we did not see any effect on birth weight, but we actually did see an effect on litter size. So it was actually increased from 22 to 23 piglets. So we did do something to piglet survival, or the very early embryo survival, which could have something to do with the maturation of eggs before mating. But we were not aiming at getting more piglets, so that was not really, but it was, still interesting. We could see that something was happening, but yeah.
Of course, the fetuses in utero, most of the growth of the fetuses is happening in the final trimester, or
Yes.
the final 25% of gestation.
Yeah.
Have you looked at energy and particularly amino acid nutrition to see if increases in nutrients during that time period would help with increasing birth weight?
I have not, but we have done some industry trials in Denmark quite recently, looking into, for instance, using a flat feeding curve for the entire gestation period instead of increasing the level during the last third. And here they looked at if there was an effect on piglet birth weight by decreasing using the flat curve. And actually, they did not find any effect on the the piglet birth weight. But what a small study from Aarhus University showed that they have looked into if there is an effect on the protein supply during late gestation, if we have some kind of carryover effect, because we could get a negative impact on the mammary gland development in late gestation by lowering the amount of protein. So I think it's protein that we have to look into if we are not limiting the fetal development by going lower, because the sow is prioritizing the fetal development and the fetal growth, so they are probably getting what they require. But I think in relation to mammary gland development and the following milk production, we still need to figure out if we will see a negative impact of using the flat curve in late gestation on that. So that is quite interesting. We will hopefully be looking into that maybe next year. So, yeah.
Have you considered adding cheese to your feed? Let us help. Keys Manufacturing is a family-owned and operated business, conveniently located in central Illinois. We have been producing Pro 88 cheese powder since 1997. Pro 88 is a high-quality source of protein and milk fat. Our cheese powder is research-proven to contribute to a smooth transition in early weaning pigs, being highly palatable, increasing feed intake, as well as delivering easily digestible nutrients. Check us out at keysmanufacturing.com for more information and links to our research. We look forward to helping you maximize your feed.
Do you think there will be a difference when you look at gilts that may not have a fully developed mammary gland versus multiparity sows relative to mammary development?
You could hypothesize that, because they are quite different, and the gilt are still at another stage of development, so they could have another requirement. But I'm not sure, because they do not have as high a milk production during their first lactation, but compared to the older sows, but they might still have some further development of the mammary gland besides getting ready for lactation that also requires extra protein or amino acids. Yeah.
So you also made a comment about sow mortality being relatively high around farrowing. So I presume right before, during, or right after. Any link there that you have seen relative to nutrition?
Well, we are very interested in looking into transition feeding. That's quite new, but quite some farms are actually using a transition diet now that is fed from 1 week before farrowing and until 2 or 3 days after farrowing. And here I think it would be beneficial to look into if what's happening to these sows. Do they have a high level of, for instance, oxidative stress, or they also do see that some of them die from heart failure when they make autopsies. And some of these things could maybe be supported by nutrition. So I think that's a very interesting area. And I think it's an area that will grow a lot. Also in other countries, this area of transition feeding, very specifically related to, of course, getting a good farrowing process, but also making a better status of the sow. I think, if you could call that, a better health status around farrowing.
Well, that concludes another episode. I've had with me Dr. Anja Strathe.
Thank you.